Hello, everybody. Welcome to our hands-on lab on agentic data engineering. We have so many people joining this call right now. It's really exciting time. So let's dive into it. We'll have more and more people joining the call as we get in, but because we want to spend as much time building as possible, we're just going to dive in right away. So to start off, hi, my name is Jenny Hearn. I am our chief of staff here at Ascend.io. And with me, our fearless leader for this lab is Shifra Williams. Shifra, how are you doing?
Hi, Jenny. I'm doing great. So excited to be here. How are you?
I'm really great. I'm really excited. We had hundreds of people register to join this lab. I think there's just so much excitement about like how can I leverage AI in my day-to-day role. And so I'm really excited for people to learn from you. I do want to invite everyone to go ahead and join us on Slack. If you are on Slack, we'd love to see you there. We have a specific Slack channel in our Slack community. You can just go to ascend.io/Slack. We'll be in the ADE lab, and today's date is the name of the channel. I have that link in the chat. Go ahead and open it there. If you have questions, you can toss it in Slack and someone from our team will respond, or you can feel free to use the Q&A tab within Zoom. And we also have some teammates who are monitoring that as well. So as we go, feel free to ask questions. We'd love to help get you as comfortable as possible. And yeah, with that, there's one other thing we didn't introduce, and that is Otto, our intelligent data engineering agent. We call him the data goat, and we'll be working a lot with Otto today. So definitely worth an introduction there. Um, Schiffer, can you tell us a little bit more about what we're going to be talking through today and what we're going to be building?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot on the agenda for today. First, we're going to talk a little bit about the background and defining what is agentic data engineering. Then we're going to help everybody get started. And then we're going to build an agentic workflow in the Ascend platform. You can really use the principles that we'll teach anywhere in any platform you like, but that's what we're going to be doing today. We'll get more into the details of that later. And if we have some time left over at the end after all this exciting building, we're going to do some Q&A and talk about next steps.
Sounds great. So let's dive in and get started. So Shifra, yeah, like would love to hear what is agentic data engineering? How should people be thinking about leveraging AI as data engineers?
Yeah, so we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, we need to talk about how we got to where we are today and what the current data landscape looks like and where agentic data engineering kind of serves that. So to start off, we want to get into the current state of data teams. And in a recent survey, we've seen that about 95% of data practitioners are at or above their work capacity. Almost half of people who responded to the survey cite that improving team productivity is one of their top priorities. And then on the automation side of things, we see that only about 5% of teams are currently using automation, but 85% are somewhat likely or very likely to implement automation by the end of this year, 2025. So this is what's going on in the data landscape. And meanwhile, in other sectors, AI success stories are everywhere, right? We got software engineers writing code up to 55% faster with agents. We got marketing up over 300% in terms of ROI boosts. And all of this kind of begs the question of why is data engineering so behind these other sectors? And we think that the answer lies in this very difficult to read gigantic diagram of the current data engineering landscape. Now, this diagram is produced every year by Firstmark, is a venture capital firm. And what you can see here is this massive, massive tool sprawl across infra, analytics, ML, applications. And essentially, you have infinite options and so many different things that you need to sort of glue together just to get a single pipeline working. I think some of the teams we've worked with, Jenny, they're using 20 plus tools to build a single pipeline. And you can see how this gets really easily out of hand and how it ends up that data engineers are spending all of their time gluing these tools together, just managing the errors that come along with that. And when something goes wrong in a stack of 20 plus tools, just spending hours digging through logs, trying to figure out if there's 5 different errors, what's the actual root cause? And how do you even approach fixing something like that? So that's where we really see the data engineering sector different from other tech areas.
Yeah, there's all this complexity. I think probably a lot of people on this call are resonating with the like, yeah, there's so much work to get done in a day. The organization is demanding more and more from me as demand for like AI and data products is just like through the roof and like my team can't keep up. And then there's all this complexity. And the complexity that teams are facing also makes it a challenge for like AI or agents to be effective too, right? Like having that complexity makes it really hard to for an AI agent to diagnose an issue because it doesn't know exactly where it's happening in the system. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we see a lot of the time is if it's hard for you, it's going to be even harder for an agent. And so what we really see is an architectural solution is necessary to kind of reimagine what the data engineering landscape could look like. And that is a necessary prereq to build a something like agentic data engineering. So let's get into that a little bit. Essentially, what you need to build agentic data engineering is an architecture that enables safe and effective AI and engineering collaboration. So what does that actually look like? Well, let's start at the bottom here with the foundation of that. And that foundation is really unifying these core data engineering capabilities. So if you can get your ingest, your transform, and your orchestration all on the same platform, that's going to enable you to then get end-to-end observability on everything that's going on and then optimize all of those workflows because you can see everything. And you can't measure what you can't see. Right. So once you have all of that kind of ready to go, now you can build something even bigger and more powerful on top of that. And with these unified capabilities, you're now able to do unified metadata collection across all of these capabilities. That metadata can then serve as context into integrated AI agents. And we're going to talk a lot about context here. So put a pin in that and stay tuned. And then furthermore, from there, you can go into automation that's using those AI agents and that metadata. So that comes to our data aware automation engine. Now, that's kind of the effective piece when we talk about safe and effective collaboration between AI and engineers. We have the unified capabilities, we have the metadata, the agents, and the automation that's going to make that effective. And now I want to talk about the safety piece because that is a crucial aspect of this where even if you can deploy something good, you want to make sure you're deploying it safely and not risking an agent breaking prod every day. That's very important to us here at Ascend. So if we look at the top of this diagram here, we have something that we call data ops. And this is essentially DevOps for data operations, exactly what it sounds like. And the way that this manifests in the Ascend architecture is we have two different areas essentially of the platform that you would be interfacing with. And that first area is developer workspaces. This is where you're developing your Python, your SQL, your YAML configuration, you're building with agentic assistance, and everything is natively get backed with perfect version control. So you can easily look at previous iterations of what you've been building. And on the right hand, we have totally different environments. The automated deployments. This is where your orchestration, your end-to-end observability, and your agentic monitoring is happening. And here's the key difference. Automated deployments are read only. So if you have an integrated AI agent that is automating something in your deployment, it is not going to have this even possibility to mess with your production data because it's read only. And this is what really allows you to build with agentic assistance and deploy with agents completely safely in an isolated development or isolated deployment environment, rather.
That makes a lot of sense. So the effective agentic experience comes from context, and the safe collaboration with agents comes from that data ops kind of life cycle where you have isolation from your dev to stage to prod kind of environments. I think the architecture here makes really like a lot of sense for what like kind of the foundations teams need in order to build agentic workflows. So assuming they have this sort of architecture in place, then what do they need in order to really build an agentic workflow from there?
Yeah. So now we're ready to answer our core question of this section and answer what agentic data engineering really is. And we're gonna keep that simple. So in this context, agentic data engineering is the data engineering that you know and love with an agentic framework. And we're going to define that agentic framework right here, right now. So the agentic framework comes down to three areas, and those areas are context, tools, and triggers. So the context is what we already talked about a little bit with this unified metadata. This metadata, along with other exploratory efforts, can be used as context that's fed into the agent. So this context will be the prompts and data that guide agents to be able to accomplish a task autonomously. Then we have tools, and this is access to services, whether it's within your data platform or via an MCP server. And this is really what empowers your agent to go out into the world, create that issue on GitHub, send that Slack message, and really be an autonomous actor in a way that a chatbot alone cannot. And then finally, a trigger. And this is what really makes it an agent rather than just a regular AI that you're chatting with. is that something happens where the agent is going to activate automatically. So that trigger is an automation that activates your agent. So to recap, agentic data engineering is data engineering where there is an AI that has context provided to it, has access to tools to act autonomously, and has an automatic trigger. So you don't need to kick it off. And that is the agentic data engineering framework that we're going to lay out for you today.
Yeah, and I think this is pretty true to like any agentic framework, right? Like it's not unique to data engineering and it's certainly not even a thought that's unique to us, it's just it's the reality of what you need to get to leverage AI in this sort of style. Cool. So what does that look like for how we're going to be building today? What are we going to be building today?
I'm so glad you asked, Jenny. So today we're going to be building today we're going to be building an agentic email alert automation. And these screenshots that you're seeing here, it's going to look very similar to exactly what we're going to see in the Ascend platform, which again, you can use this agentic framework that we've talked about to build in any platform. But we're going to apply this specifically to Ascend because we have this really simple interface that you can kind of see on the screen here, where you can build an UI and you can also see the YAML config that generates. So how does this email alert fit into the framework we just talked about? Well, we're going to have a prompt fed into the AI, and that's going to be some context that we give to the AI. And we're also going to have tools where the AI is going to have access to be able to send an email and also to gather information in order to send that email. Maybe it's going to look at our pipeline run history. It's going to look at what's in our code. And the trigger is this automation that's going to activate our agent. So in this context, if we look at the little configuration UI here, the trigger is an event. You can almost think of the AI workflow as listening for this event. And when it sees a flow run error on a specific pipeline flow run, that is when the AI knows to automatically activate. So to summarize, we have prompts that is going to be fed into the AI as context. The AI is going to use tools to grab even more context and gather information about the system. And all of that is going to be automatically activated by this flow run error event. This is what we're going to configure today to give you an agentic email alert automation experience.
Amazing. All right. So Cody has been sharing a link to a doc in the chat. You can go ahead and open that up. We're going to get started. So Shifra, I'll have you go to that doc as well, and we'll just work from there, I think. Shifra, thanks for putting this together. I think it's always easier to follow along on a doc. I think it's just, and our doc site is beautiful. Thank you for all your work on it. So starting at the top here, again, the link to our Slack community is there along with the channel that we'll be in for today. So definitely, if you haven't already done that, go ahead and land there. If you'd like a place to ask questions or just say hi. Um, and then the next thing I want to call out is that prerequisites section. So the first thing is your Ascend trial instance. Um, Again, we're just building in Ascend because we already have this architecture that Schiffer was mentioning as kind of a prerequisite to having kind of the framework in place in order to build these agentic workflows. And so super easy, go ahead and fill out that form, first name, last name, email, company, job title, and click sign up. You should get an email in your inbox from Auth0 with a link to like an invitation to your own personal instance of Ascend. You have a free trial that will extend. You can also go to app.ascend/sign up and land at this same place. So go ahead and sign up. And then when you get that email, you can click the activate or accept your invitation in that email from Auth0, and that should get you into your Ascend instance. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Shifra. While people are accepting their invitations and everything, could you give us a quick tour of like what's happening when people log into Ascend, this first homepage that people are getting to?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is exactly what you're going to see when you open your Ascend instance here. You're going to see the Ascend homepage, and the only thing that's going to be different is the workspace name. This is the Shifter workspace. You'll have a workspace that has your name. And you can see the workspace and the deployment that we just talked about in our architecture diagram a couple of moments ago. So I have a workspace where I'm going to be developing, and I have a completely isolated production deployment environment. Obviously, in a regular software engineering lifecycle, you'd have development, staging, and production, but we just wanted to make this really simple. So we'll be using just the one production deployment throughout this process, in case people were wondering about that. And for now, I want to give everyone a little tour of the workspace. Um, and then Jenny, just let me know when we might want to talk about the AI setup a little bit.
Yeah,
So
let's do this. Just give people a minute to log in and get in before we do our next steps here.
yeah, absolutely. So when we jump into the workspace, this is our super graph view where each node in this graph is a pipeline. And if you had multiple pipelines in here, we only have the one, but if you had multiple, you could see how they were all interconnected, which is really cool to see how your data moves. If I click into the sales pipeline, I'm going to see the flow graph. And this is the graph for one individual pipeline. So this is essentially our DAG. And what we see here is these light blue ingest components that are reading from GCS. We have these teal transform components that are using SQL and Python code to transform your data and store it in a data platform. And then we have these magenta components, which are tests and tasks. And that's really allowing you to run any arbitrary SQL or Python code that you would need for your use case. Getting into the left side panel a little bit, I want to just show the tools that we'll be using later in this demo. So we have the build panel that's showing all our resources. We can see all the automations here, and we will be building our own automation later today in just a couple minutes. We have a file panel, which is going to give you that traditional file tree experience that you know from all the IDEs that you love. And we also have a source control panel where we'll be doing a ton of really cool GitOps in here. So stay tuned for that as well. One of the reasons that makes the platform super powerful. And right now, I just want to introduce Otto, who we saw earlier in the beginning of this presentation. We can talk to Otto in the side panel here at any point in the instance. So whether I'm on the homepage, whether I'm in the workspace, Otto's always there for me to talk to. And I want to show a little bit what
Before you do that, Shifra, I think that would be a good segue actually to talking about like to do agentic data engineering, you need a good model.
yes,
And on
so
these
true.
send demo instances, um, we have limited the models that you have access to free models, just again for our own infrastructure. But for this webinar, we are opening up a shared API key for OpenAI. So we're all going to configure that together so that everyone has access to the best tools available as we're building together today. So if you go to the settings tab, we also have instructions for this in docs too. Shifra, if you go back to the docs page, yeah, that setting up your OpenAI AI API key this is kind of the workflow that we'll be going through today. But I will go ahead and let Shifra take it from here, and I'll share the OpenAI API key that we will be using uh, just for today during this webinar. Um, you can use this for today. Go ahead, Shifra.
Awesome. So just to go back to step 0 here, if I go start from the homepage, I'm going to click on my profile at the top right, click settings, and that takes me into the Ascend instance settings here. So if I go to the AI and models section, I'm going to scroll past some of these other models here and just look at the OpenAI section. Let me just zoom in on that so everyone can see exactly what's going on here. So I happen to already have a key set up, but if I were you, I would be clicking on this plus sign to actually add a key. Then I'm going to create a secret, call it something along the lines of OpenAI API key separated by underscores, and paste that value right in here and click create. Now, you can use the API key that Jenny talked about, the one that we're providing in chat here, just for the duration of this webinar. So paste that in here, click create, let's X out of that. Then what you would do is select the OpenAI API key from the selector here, and you want to verify that to make sure that's working. So we click the verify button, make sure we see that green check mark that's going to come up in just a moment. And once you've verified, you want to make sure to save that configuration that you've just set up for your OpenAI key. So save that. And once that loads, you should be good to go.
Great. So this gives you access to OpenAI for this lab. So you have access to some of those models. Shifra, what model should we be setting as the default for our project today?
Everyone should be using GPT 4.1 as the default. The way you set that is you hover over a model and click make default. GPT 4.1 is already my default, but if I were you, I'd be hovering right here and clicking the make default until I see this default label on that model.
Awesome. Great. Make sure you have your default set as GPT 4.1. So another place that you can choose your model, just to point it out, Shifra, is at that bottom of the chat. So if you forget to set the default and you just want to choose it there, you can absolutely choose that model in the chat window as well as we go through. So great. We have our OpenAI API key. We have access to these great models. Shifra, introduce us to how we would work with auto kind of in an agentic workflow that feels really familiar to people. I think a lot of people are probably familiar with like even using ChatGPT, but maybe other tools like Cursor or GitHub Copilot. So what does that look like kind of here in this environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can share our agentic Slack automation, which is going to be similar to what we'll be setting up together, just to show
Sorry,
people
sorry.
that.
I just meant the chat. So like maybe
Oh,
the
you just meant the
demo
chat.
time, the
Oh, yeah,
demo.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Okay,
No,
cool.
no, you're good.
So we're going to type demo time, and Otto is going to automatically know that we are actually demoing to you guys right now. And it's going to suggest some really cool things to show you in the platform. So you might be wondering, how does Otto know my name? How does Otto know that I'm demoing Ascend to someone right now? And all of that is configured in our custom agents and rules, specifically this demo welcome rule here. And what's awesome about this is it allows you to have a completely tailored agentic experience using the platform. And it could be something as simple as demo time, where we're configuring some front matter to say, always apply this rule. Every time a user sends you a message, you must greet them and then ask if they're demoing a send, show off some cool tricks. It can be something really simple like that, or it can be something much more complicated and tailored. It can be, hey, I want you to always be reviewing my code so it adheres to my company style guide. I want you to be building data pipelines with a specific architecture and always using this method over another method. And it can really be as powerful and as exciting as you want, but it can also be fun. It can also be demo. It can also be, throw in some goat puns because we have all of the data pipeline goat. And again, it's really about delivering that customized agentic experience to each and every person on the platform.
That makes a lot of sense. So you have this kind of chat style thing. You have rules and even custom agents that you can build that are doing some fun things in the platform. So let's get into like the bulk of what we're building today, which is that context, triggers, and tools workflow that you mentioned earlier. I will say there are like tons of features within Ascend that we aren't really covering. We're an end-to-end data engineering platform, ingestion, transformation, orchestration, observability. We'll briefly, like you briefly see them today, but we're really focusing on like how do you build agentic stuff. So um yeah, hopefully that's really helpful. And yeah, so Schiffer, walk us through what we're going to be building today and then we can start building. I know we're already like we only have 20 minutes left.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief and get right into the building. But just to recap for what we saw in the slides, we have these automations where we're looking at events as an automatic trigger and then having auto gather context from a prompt as well as some other things, and then use these tool calls to really take action on our behalf autonomously. So this specific automation that we are showing right now is the auto Slack automation. And this is looking at flow run errors on a couple of different data pipelines. When that happens, we have an automatic action that's being triggered where we're running auto. And Otto is given this prompt that a flow has just failed, and his objective is to investigate the failure, gather some information, and post a summary in a Slack channel. Now, you might be wondering, how does this actually work? How does Otto actually get access to this Slack channel? And we can see all of that in this MCP configuration here. So in case anyone's not familiar, MCPs are model context protocols, and they're basically your AI's interface to external tools, like we talked about, giving your AI the capability to take action outside of whatever data platform you might be building in. So in this case, the way that Slack automation works is we have Auto using these NPX process commands and then leveraging these credentials we've given it, which are our Slack app token, specific team and channel IDs, so that Auto can then use this information to make external tool calls to the Zencoder AI Slack MCP server and send us the Slack message. And if we do have time at the end, or if people ask about it, we can show this. But this is really the framework that we'll be building in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think too it's getting access to credentials is always like the hardest part of this. Like this config
Yeah.
file is like incredibly beautiful. It's so easy to build. But obviously like getting the credentials would take up the whole next 20 minutes that we have to build. So how are we simplifying this down so that it's something we can build in 20 minutes as opposed to like having people dig through for credentials for the next 20 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly why we picked this more simplified email automation, because the sky's the limit when it comes to agents, but we want people to have something they can build right here, right now. So I
Cool.
say, let's get building.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. So if you go to the build panel on the left side of your Ascent instance, you'll see this automation section. We're going to hit plus to create a new automation. So let's make sure to give that automation a name. Because this email is going to be triaging and kind of explaining issues, I'm going to call this automation auto triage. Feel free to do the same. or give it any name you want. The only restriction is we want to restrict this to alphanumeric characters, meaning letters and numbers, and dashes or underscores. We don't want spaces. We don't want apostrophes, weird characters like that that might mess something up when the automation's running. So let's call this auto triage for now. I'm going to add an event here that's going to be our trigger. So we want to trigger on a flow run error to send us an email alert when an error happens. So that means we don't want this flow run success event. We're actually going to want the flow run error. So we'll select that. Then the only flow we have here is the sales flow. So that's an easy one to work on here. So we'll click on the sales flow. Now we have an event, an automatic trigger set up. So what we can do now is add an action, and this is going to be where the AI is taking action on our behalf. So for the action name, same deal. We want to keep it alphanumeric. So we'll call this auto email action. And the action type we want to take is an email alert, as we mentioned. That is the type of action that we want the AI to take here. So I'm going to have this actually be sent to all users on the instance. You can add any other email recipients you want. All users is another option, which right now on your instance should be just you. Just make sure to click add after you select that option. You'll see it show up here to know that it's working. Awesome. We're almost done, folks. We're so close. Now it's time to add in the agentic piece of this here. So we're going to check the box to include an auto summary. And then we're going to add a prompt for auto. And you can copy that prompt directly from this doc here. So if we follow along and scroll down to the bottom of the doc here, I'm just going to refresh. And we can see that there's a hands-on lab little call out here. If you're following along with the hands-on lab, paste the following prompt into your config. So I'm just going to click the copy button right here, wait for that check mark. And now I'm going to be able to copy these detailed AI instructions directly into my Ascend instance. Awesome. So all
Shipra,
of those
real
instructions are
fast.
there. Mhm.
Some people were wondering where the build panel is. So
Yes.
can you show kind of on the side over here, if you click, the pentagon, not a pentagon, octagon,
Hexagon.
the hexagon. I know how many sides things have. That hexagon, that's your build panel, and you can click that plus to the automation. Just wanted to point that out because a couple of people had the question of how do I get to build that automation? So yep, there's that, and then the file panel is the one in the middle, and the source control is the third one there.
Yes.
So yep. So you found the build panel, you added an automation, you triggered this on a flow run error, specifically saying when the sales pipeline fails, then kind of an if then programming, then send this email alert to all users, include that auto email summary with this prompt from the doc. Okay, so we have this configuration. If you save it, Shifra, I know you can go back and forth between the code view and the configuration view, which is kind of fun. I know, for most people, the code view feels a little bit more familiar, feels a little comfier than that UI, but this gives you like a really easy way to go back and forth between those two things. So we have this built. I think the question that is next is like, how do we test this, right? We should never just deploy any agents without understanding how are they going to actually operate on these things. So how would we go about testing this, Shipra?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing we need to do is create the conditions for this to run that we expect it to run in the automatic deployment. Then once we have those conditions, we can just copy paste this prompt into our auto chat window, see how it performs in chat, and just make sure that it's doing what we want it to be doing. So
Great.
what we're going to do is create the conditions for a flow run error. And this is so much fun, y'all, because what we never get to do in our jobs is break the flow. But that's exactly what we're going to do on purpose
Break
today.
the flow.
That's the flow to get this flow run error event happening. And then we'll be able to copy paste this prompt and see how this automation is going to behave in the wild. Once we see that it's behaving as we expect, we can do a one-click promotion to production, which is going to be so seamless and so much fun. And then from there, we'll actually test it in the deployment. And if all goes well, I'll have an email to show to all of you. So
Great.
let's
Awesome.
yeah.
So we get to break the flow. Can we use AI to do that? I say like I don't already know how we do that.
Yeah, we actually can. That's the next thing I was going to show y'all. So what we're going to do is we're going to use AI to create a data quality test, which is also, baked into every layer of the platform. You can have good data quality testing. And we're going to add a test that's going to automatically fail. So what we're going to do is see, okay, this sales component here has almost 2 million records. So what if we created a test that asserts it should only have one record? And that's going to automatically fail and break our flow. So we're going to use Auto to actually create that test, and just tell Auto, add a test to see if this component has exactly one row. Now Auto's going to think for a minute, figure out the right thing to do here, and add the test directly into our code.
Great. So the prompt you should all put into Auto is add a test. Click open that sales um, Python file in your DAG, and then ask Auto to add a test that there is only one row in this file.
Yeah.
Auto should produce something like this, where it gives you it. It should, because your file is new, also add the import of the test. So you should see two changes here to your file, where it's adding the test, and it's also adding the test itself. It's importing the test and adding the test itself.
Awesome. So we can see this test here. We're asserting that the count of rows in this table will be one. We know that's not true. So we know this is going to work in the sense it's going to break as we want. So we are going to accept these changes, save, and run just this component because we want to keep this simple here. And as soon as we
Oh,
get the
Shifra, one note that will fail because we haven't told people to run this pipeline before, and it'll depend on
that's
ingesting
true.
data to this. So actually, instead of running this component,
Mhm.
let's run the entire flow. And to do that, you can go back to this DAG view and click that Run Flow button.
Perfect. Such a good call out, Jenny. We want
Yeah, I
everyone
know.
at
We've
home to
already
be able
run
to
this in
follow that.
ours, so the data exists upstream. But if you were to just click run in that component, there would be no data for it to transform. And so you would hit the error, not that there was no data quality test, but that there was no data to perform this operation on at all. Which would actually still work because the flow is still broken. So we could still test that the flow is broken that way. But yeah, so go ahead and run the whole flow. That should take probably just a minute or two to get through the whole pipeline. It should break at that data quality test anyway, because we have broken it. And then from there, Shifra, what would what would people do to test that that prompt is working, so that when they deploy this code, they can kind of know what to expect it and test the output of that flow
Yeah. So
or
we
of that
have the
automation?
we have the exact error that we expect. Always make sure that you see the error that you're expecting to see. It's that count equal test. So if we go back to the triage now, we've created the conditions for this prompt to be relevant. So now all we have to do is copy paste this prompt, open the auto chat window back up. I'll start a new chat to clear out that ever so important context. We can paste that prompt right in here. And just to go through what's happening in this prompt, auto is being called in a response to an error. It's going to research why this happened using these tool calls, which is part of the agentic process, like we talked about. So it's going to do these tool calls like calling list runs. And these are internal ascend tool calls, where you can see the parameters being fed to auto. You can see auto's response. It's looking at the sales flow. It knows exactly what to look for because it has all that unified metadata fed to it as context. And jumping back into this prompt here, you want to know what broke, how long it's been broken, who broke it, etc. And we're adding these things like you're not allowed to ask me for clarifications because we want a truly agentic process where it's not stopping for human in the loop communication, right? So that's what all of that is about. Then from there, we have a bunch of email response formatting because we want a nice human readable, pretty email at the end of the day. And so what Auto's doing is it's giving us this pretty root cause analysis. It's telling us what broke. It's giving us the timeline, the context. The problem is me. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. And then we have some technical details also thrown in there, along with some recommendations of how to fix it. So I would be thrilled to get an email with all this information that I don't need to find myself. And I think that this is showing the exact behavior that we want, Jenny. So we're gonna jump to the next step, which is actually deploying this to production. And I'm gonna show y'all how to do that.
All right. So let's give folks a minute just to catch up. Hopefully your flow ran. Hopefully you got an error. That's not a thing we say all this data engineering. Hopefully you got a data error. Um, Another thing too, another agentic experience that you have is you could even open up that error message and talk to Otto about it in the chat. But what we want to do for this one is just copy and paste that prompt that we created in our automation, feed it that prompt and have this output so we can kind of see the output. If you wanted to tweak anything in that prompt, like maybe you want maybe you want it to tell you like, and also give me a joke because if a pipeline breaks, like I need a joke to make me feel better about it, you know? You can add that sort of thing, test it again. Um, and from there, let's go ahead and deploy this like you were talking about, Shifra.
Yeah, absolutely. So y'all were just working the build panel. The source control panel is very nearby. So you'll be clicking the source control little merging branch icon here. And from there, we can open the Git log and actions panel. And this is where a lot of the really powerful Git ops happen in Ascend. So you could merge main into your current branch. You could squash a bunch of commits. But for now, what we're going to do is merge to our deployment in one click. It does not get easier than this, y'all. This is incredible. So I'm going to click the merge to deployment, click production. I'm going to confirm that this is what I want to do. I want to break my flow. Yes, just this one time. And the merge is successful. And when this reloads, we'll see there's no more changes because everything's going to be up to date with my main branch. Boom, 0 changes. So now what we want to do is we've been running this code in the workspace. We want to get into that deployment environment where automations are happening. And one quick thing that I want to discuss here, which we didn't touch on, is when you're running an automation in Ascend, you want to make sure that this enabled is true. If that enabled has a false value, then it's not going to run in the deployment. So we're all good to go, but always a good thing to double check here. Great. So now we're going to move into the production deployment. So I'm just going to do that with click navigation. I'll click on the Ascend homepage to jump back home and then click production, which you should all have in your instance to follow along. So from here, we can explore the build and see the sales flow that we know and love. So we're going to click into the sales flow and right click anywhere to run this entire flow. And now the sales component was working, but we should see it break in the deployment. And when that happens, we should get our email or golden ticket to Agentic workflows. So I'm going to stick around and monitor for that here.
Yeah. Shifra, one note too is like if you're waiting on a build because you just deployed, you will need the code to build before it can run. So that's just a call out, maybe give it a second to build before you actually deploy. Um, Shifra, can you go back to that deployment dashboard and kind of give us a tour there while we're waiting for the pipeline to run?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jenny. So keeping me on track here, I appreciate you. So what we see on the deployments dashboard is this really, really nice view for end-to-end observability that is showing us all of our active runs, our recent errors, recent runs, automation, so we can check the status on things like agentic email automations, our latest deploy status, all our last changes, and our component runs. So let's take a look to see what that end-to-end observability can actually look like here. So if I open the sales flow, I can see all of my runs, whether they errored, whether they succeeded, which ones are automatic, which ones are manual. Those are indicated by the little person icon. And if we zoom into a specific flow run, let's pick a successful one, then an erroring one. We can actually see everything that's going on in this pipeline timeline. Let me just run back here. We can see everything going on in this individual flow run timeline. We can see every single component and how long it took. And this can be really, really helpful for debugging because you're going to see exactly where your bottlenecks are, exactly how long everything is taking.
Yeah. And all of that context is also context that AI has to then do things like, oh, this errored, like, what's the trend over time? When was it erroring? Why was it erroring before? That makes a lot of sense. Well, that's going to, can you give us some other examples? So this is obviously a pretty simple example of what this would look like, to send an email when a flow fails. Can you talk through what might be some other things people could do once they've connected to things like those MPC servers you were talking about before?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the MCP servers that we had was GitHub, and we actually do have a really cool GitHub automation that we can share with everyone. So if I just showed you this prompt right here, um, this GitHub prompt is designed to trigger in response to a flow run error and actually create an issue describing the root cause and the impact of that error. So let's see what that looks like. And I can show you this issue in GitHub once it gets created. Should be super exciting.
Cool. So this prompt is saying, okay, there's a flow error, create a GitHub issue in my GitHub account so that it's added to my list. Oh, someone said they just got the email alert and it worked. That's pretty exciting. Did you get your email alert, Shifra?
That's very exciting. I'm so glad to hear that. Let's
Well,
check
first,
back in
let's
on that
finish
current
this
run.
GitHub thing because that's pretty cool too.
Sure. So, like we mentioned, we had a bunch of Ascend tool calls before looking at listing runs, but we also have these external GitHub tool calls. So, this create issue is a GitHub tool call on the GitHub API itself, the GitHub MCP rather itself, which is super exciting. So, this is still running here, and I think our flow is also still pending. This is just what happens with the demo gods, y'all. Um, and so, if we look at this URL that we actually got in response, I am going to copy this URL and literally just open a new tab, paste that in. GitHub has created a GitHub issue for me live in front of you all, telling me a summary of what went wrong in this sales flow run. What is the root cause? What is the impact? And what do I need to do to fix it? So this is super cool to see. It even has some references to documentation that might be relevant here. So I'm just going to close this and say, Auto created this live. But super, super cool to see that Auto could do something like that and even tag it with some, bugs and other
Yeah, that's
relevant
really fun.
tags.
I love that. Cool. So what about our email automation? Has yours come through? I know some other folks have theirs have gone through, but I think we might just be hitting a bug here or just something's pending.
I'm happy to show what this email actually looks like if people want to see.
Yeah, I'd love to see.
Awesome.
I'm just hitting something.
Yeah, just hitting something live. So if I open up my email to share with you all, I promise I'm not going to get too deep and personal here. This is exactly what the auto triage email looks like here. So we can see it's triggered by a slow run error events. We can see all the metadata associated with things that have said like the runtime, the profile, the flow, the ID, etc. Because again, we're collecting all that unified metadata as context. We have active links to the flow run that failed, which is super, super helpful for debugging. We can go right back into that run. And then we have what happened, which in this case, it was actually just canceled. But we have some context as to what this means. What are the recommended actions? What are the additional notes? And even some encouragement that we are the go-to data engineering and we are capable of getting this pipeline back on track. So it's again, this really beautiful human readable format, which we got by tuning our prompt and leveraging that agentic data engineering.
Yeah, and I think I saw the notification pop up that you got a new one. So it seems like it did it for the canceled one, and it probably did it for the next one too. So that's pretty great. I know we are right at time, and I'm sure there are many, many questions that people have. We went really fast through this, and so I do want to say, for 45-minute build session to build a complete agentic workflow where you have the context, tools, and triggers. Um, we know we were flying through it, but we really just wanted to demo kind of the power of that framework and what you can accomplish when you have that in place. We will definitely have more of these hands-on labs. We will be sending a follow-up email with this documentation and further documentation. And yeah, we're just really grateful for your time today. Thank you so much for being here to build with us. For those of you who had questions, we didn't necessarily get any time to answer. We will try to answer those over email later today. So thank you all so much for the time, and we will talk to you all later. Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.